Welcome back to Corpse Party. What's going on, everyone? It's the Niskel. For Bonus 2, I decided to go over the timeline of events leading up to Corpse Party by going over the Heavenly Host tragedy. The game itself did a good job of explaining what happened to Sachiko, Yoshi, Shinozaki, and everything up to that, but there were a few details that they happened to leave out, and I noticed during the episodes that they were explaining the backstory of Heavenly Host, a few of you had question marks over your heads because, while it was explained well, there were a few things missing, so hopefully this small timeline, this short recap of the story, will help fill in some of the holes. So, to put it bluntly, the prestigious school of Heavenly Host started out as a bright and shining future for everyone who went there, and then it went downhill, and went downhill fast. The principal, I guess he may have been feeling lonely, or he just had the hots for Yoshi Shinozaki, because he tried to molest her. And, of course, she wasn't going to have any of it. Cut to them going down the stairs, Yoshi's trying to run away, and the principal pushes her down the stairs. Her neck snaps, and she dies. And who should see this entire event but her daughter, Sachiko. In order to keep her quiet, the principal chased down Sachiko and choked her to death. So that's 2 casualties in about 10 minutes. This is where the events start going downhill very quickly. So you have 2 casualties caused by the hand of the principal. During the nights after that, and it's noted in the game that while the students may not have known what had happened, the morale was very, very low. They could tell that something terrible had happened, and that wasn't the end of it. Nights after the events, night after night, the principal was actually seeing Sachiko in his dreams. To make them nightmares, I guess. He couldn't stand the fact that he had done something wrong. So in order to try and exorcise her from his dreams, he defiled Sachiko's corpse, the one he had buried underground, so nobody would find her. He cut out her tongue so she wouldn't say anything, and stabbed her multiple times to be sure that she was dead. Even though he clearly choked her to death, it was just to make sure that she would never talk. Eventually, the nightmares kept getting worse, and he couldn't stand it anymore. He committed suicide. Here's the part that wasn't really explained, and it more goes towards Japanese culture and how they see spirits. Sachiko had made a corporeal body as a vengeful spirit, and that's where the cultural differences change. The Japanese see spirits as kind of somewhat high and mighty. So, the event that a spirit makes a corporeal body for itself as a vengeful spirit, that's okay. That's somewhat normal in horror stories like this. And that's where the confusing bit gets when you switch from a Japanese audience to an American audience. We don't normally see that. We see spirits as something, as some sort of an illusion. But Sachiko had made herself a corporeal body as a vengeful spirit, and killed other children so that her mother in the afterlife would not be lonely. Sachiko's mom, Yoshi, had noticed that Sachiko had been killing for her, to send her the spirits of dead children to keep her company. If you were wondering what that text was at the very beginning of the game, that's the exact same text that was in Yoshi's diary. She was happy that Sachiko was avenging her somehow. Yoshi was also a vengeful spirit. She was appreciating what Sachiko was doing for her, but eventually she noticed that Sachiko was doing it for a different reason, and it became too much for her. She didn't want it to happen anymore. She was using the principal's son, who was slowly losing his mind. His mind was degrading. At certain points, he didn't know any better. He was the accomplice, and she was doing the killing. Instead of killing to send children to her mother, she eventually did it for fun. She had kind of, gone a bit crazy, and was killing the kids just because. Cut to the timeline. This is years later after she had started this killing spree. Cut to the event of the 3 children and Sachiko, in air quotes, where she was captured also. She had killed the 3 main students who were the ghosts in the Corpse Party game. Because she had unblindfolded one of the children, they had also become vengeful spirits. Because they saw who killed them, they wanted revenge. So after everyone had been caught, Sachiko got off scot-free. She had killed the 3 children and blamed it on the principal's son, who later, after being seen as incompetent, had hung himself. The school was torn down. Consider Heavenly Host history. But because those children were able to see their killer, they had become vengeful spirits who created the alternate dimension of Heavenly Host. And Sachiko would kill anyone who messed up the Ever After charm. Now, when you're a vengeful spirit, I can't speak from experience, of course, you honestly don't care who killed you first or whether you are good or bad. Basically, you're mad because someone killed you. You don't care anymore. You just kill anybody. And that's where Sachiko had ended up going. So instead of killing people in the real world because she no longer had an accomplice and it was a lot harder to kill children, she ended up in the alternate dimension of Heavenly Host, where Corpse Party takes place, and she would kill anyone who ended up there from doing the Sachiko Ever After charm incorrectly. Now, cut to a different part of the story, and we have Naho and Kibiki. Naho had kind of a crush on her mentor, Kibiki, who was doing research on the haunted Heavenly Host. Apparently, word had gotten out, and events of the Sachiko Ever After charm and people disappearing, he eventually got some research going and wanted to know what was causing this. So Naho, knowing full well that she was sending people to their doom, the only reason she did that was to send more test subjects for Kibiki. She posted the incorrect details of the charm to send victims to Heavenly Host so that her love interest would have more to document. Eventually, Kibiki, his cameraman, and Naho ended up in Heavenly Host. Naho ended up killing Kibiki because she was taken over by the Darkening. Cut to current day, and the events of Corpse Party take place. This explains why Naho and Kibiki's corpse were somewhat decayed but not fully skeletal. There was still something left. They had recently died. Naho had gone missing technically in the real world, and cut to, let's say, a few months later, and their corpses are found in Heavenly Host. So then the events of Corpse Party take place, and then you get to the ending. Some extra details were added in the sequel, Book of Shadows, but we'll get to that one later, don't worry. Hopefully this clears up some of the questions that you may have had. If there are any points that I had missed, please put them down in the comments and I will do my best to answer it. This is somewhat of a confusing backstory to the game itself leading up to the events of the game, and hopefully, when Book of Shadows is done, it'll fill in some of the holes. We'll actually be going to the real bonus content next time, so I will see you guys then.